Hello, hello, all. Hope you're well. This is African Queen Mo coming to you from the beautiful city of Nairobi and saying hello. How are you doing? I hope you had a good day and I hope that you can hear me. Yup, it's a little bit chilly tonight, so I'm wearing my jacket because the subject I want to discuss today is a chilly one. This one is about politics, Kenyan politics. Oh my goodness, being a Monday, it's a dreadful subject, really. And so the question is, what is going on in Kenya? Seriously, guys, what is going on? We are being bombarded left and right, news, and it's never positive. I just wish I could hear some positive news, really. But anyway, in general, there's a lot going on. I've been listening to the news. Like I try to turn on various programs in the morning and listen in. And each time, whenever I listen, I'm like shaking my head. I can't believe what's going on in Kenya because, we were once seen as the Mecca, as a place as the oasis for peace and tranquility and refuge. And now I don't understand, guys. Do you understand what's going on? Do you understand what's going on? Are you worried? Are you concerned? We're getting so many warnings. People are telling us everywhere, prepare as Kenyans. Don't assume that everything is okay because it's not, apparently. And that can be really super scary, by the way, we're not used to living in precarious times. We kind of have been a little bit spoiled. And so it's a bit difficult for us to accept or even to believe that we're no longer number one, that we're no longer respected the way we used to be, that you see Raila go to the Africa Union and be presented as Kenya's choice for the EAC chair, and he be rejected like that. And when instead of bowing out, he bows out initially. And then eventually he says, oh, you know what, we could have actually, made them recount all those votes. And I asked myself, really? Are you sure? I don't really think so. So basically, guys, generally, Kenya is not in a good place. When it comes to IDs, why are we allowing just anybody to have an ID that is Kenyan? And then, in the end, who are we going to blame if anything goes wrong? Let me share my screen with you first of all, okay? And then watch something with me. Watch this, guys. Just watch this briefly.
Another story now, President William Ruto has handed out more goodies to the northeastern region. A day after he scrapped the requirement for residents there and other border counties to undergo extra vetting before being issued with identification cards, the government has now made it even easier for them to acquire passports. The head of state, who on Thursday toured Garissa County, officially opened the Garissa Immigration Office, which he says will make it easier for residents to acquire traveling documents without the struggle of traveling all the way to Nairobi. Gatete Njoroge reports.
It is time to reap for residents of Northeastern region. The visit by President William Ruto to the region this week has wiped away tears of frustrations for over 6 decades. Communities here have had to endure extra vetting when applying for identification and traveling documents.
Tumpigie makofi rais.
President Ruto, who on Wednesday signed a proclamation scrapping the 60-year-old vetting requirement, on Thursday went a step further and opened an immigration office in Garissa town to serve residents in need of passports.
Leo tumesema kwa watu wa Northern Kenya, ofisi ya passport tumefungua hapa Garissa. Hakuna haja ya kwenda tena mpaka Nairobi kutafuta passport. Passport yenu mtapata hapa Garissa. Tunaelewana jameni? Kwa sababu tunataka usawa, tunataka kuondoa ubaguzi.
The head of state, who emphasizes on ensuring all Kenyans are equal through service delivery, says the people of the north need to enjoy registration and traveling services like other Kenyans. Following the move, it will now be easier for residents to acquire the all-important documents within 3 weeks, as opposed to months and years witnessed before.
Zamani inaweza kuwa mtu akatue kibali, unajaza form, hiyo form inajazwa kutoka Wajir inaenda Nairobi, na hiyo form inakaa mwaka kadhaa, mwaka 5, mwaka 4. Ile mtoto alipatiwa hiyo kibali wakati alikuwa 18 years, inaweza kuwa afike 25 years, 30 years, 40 years bila kupata hiyo document.
It was not just about the wait, but also the process that one had to go through to get an identity card.
Hapa awali kwa Msomali kupata kipande ama kupata passport kulikuwa kwa vikoso mingi. Lazima CID officer awe pale, lazima special branch awe pale, lazima DO awe pale, lazima chief awe pale, na lazima wazee wengi kama 10 ambaye anajua yeye ako pale.
Na washukuru rais wetu ameondoa hiyo vikwazo yote, hiyo tunasema asante sana, na kwa niaba ya watu ya Wajir.
Residents who have in the past protested the vetting process, terming it unjust, unfair, and discriminatory, are hopeful that the proclamation will change their lives for better, as the documents will enable them access other critical services. Gatete Njoroge,
Well, thank you, Citizen TV. Let me invite Susan here to the show. Apologies. Welcome,
Hello,
Susan, to the show.
everybody. Thank you.
How are you doing
Hello,
today?
everybody. Well, thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, that's really good. So basically, sorry, let me just get rid of that particular show, that particular video. Yeah, so you guys, you can see that the government is getting rid of vetting, and this was a 60-year-old vetting requirement. And it's like 6 decades. And I can't believe that it used to take people up to 5 years to get their ID document. Of course, that's unfair. If these are really Kenyans, Somali Kenyans on the border. But the fact is that it's all border countries are being affected. All border counties are affected, basically. And Susan, do you have anything to say about that? Can you explain, maybe from a legal perspective, why did it take 60 years for that rule to be removed? And what are the risks with the ID vetting, not being vetted?
Yeah, I think one of the things is that our borders are quite porous in some areas, and there's free flow of people from different nations, of neighboring nations, to come in and obtain documents. So you have because we have some people groups who cross borders. They live on both sides of the borders. So for instance, the Somalis, they live in both Kenya and Somalia, Djibouti, and Ethiopia. We have Somalis in those countries, those 3 countries. So because the borders are quite porous, I think the earlier administrations found it important to ensure that the people being given national documents are actually Kenyans, and that's why they were talking about needing several people to vet to confirm this person is from here and this is the family and the chief's letter and the what and the what. Definitely, it was more rigorous for them. Again, of course, through the borders, this is where we were getting the small arms, the weapons that were coming in through the borders. We even had, I was just reading an article earlier on in the day about the Oromo Liberation Army, and they have actually been in Kenya as far down as far south from Ethiopia into Isiolo for 32 years. And it's just now that they're trying to root them out because they were running like a contraband. There were narcotics dealers, arms dealers, and all these illegal things. And this is how bang and other things were now coming in into Kenya, and they were going first to the border to Isiolo, Meru, and whatever, and then finding their way into Nairobi. So it's only, they've been there for 32 years, and they had like 12 camps, and which a special army police, actually a special police unit has been assigned to go and dismantle them. And they found about 20 tons of bang, heavily guarded by armed people. And of course, there's a lot of terrorizing of the people living in that area. So generally speaking, it was for security reasons that those measures are there. Let's hope that that it's something that will not be abused. The the lifting of the vetting process. Well, it's all of us are vetted, but I think for those border towns it was more difficult because of that. It's not easy to tell a Kenyan Somali from an Ethiopian Somali, or a Somali from Somalia, or even Djibouti. So you can't tell, they look all the same, and actually they could be cousins living on different sides of the border. So that is why it was so stringent, and it was for security reasons. And we hope that people will respect that it doesn't mean there'll be no vetting, but the vetting will be the same as the vetting is for other people. So it will not be more stringent in terms of requirements being stricter. I think that's what he meant. So let's hope that will not, that it will not be abused by anybody, or an opportunity for corruption to make it worse. The corruption. We hear, like you said, somebody's taking 5 years to get a national document. I mean, like the ID, and that's completely wrong. But let's hope it's not abused. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that detailed response. I think I'm looking at two sides of the coin, because the emphasis here is on travel documents, passports, so that these people can travel for their Hajj, to Mecca without, smoothly, without problems. But I read something sinister in there, which is the fact that right now, I believe there has been talk, or should I say, the government has been accused of already starting campaigns for 2027 elections. So, from what I heard, is that approximately 1 million votes would come from this region. And although, the total votes is not, it may not be the biggest impact, have the biggest impact, but the fact is that we have, like, for example, 5.8 million people voting from Central, from the Kikuyu community. And if that group decides to reduce the number of votes for the current president or the current party, it means that the government needs to identify people from different parts to fill that gap. So there is this potential for these votes, these cards, these IDs to be actually used to encourage people to vote for the current government in 2027. At the same time, what influences me to say this is because there are so many young people right now who are waiting for their IDs. From last year, young people were saying that it's taking them more than 8 months, almost a year, to apply. To get their IDs approved, or even to receive their IDs. These are identification documents. We're not talking about travel documents. The youth have not been given IDs. People are applying for them, and there is all sorts of stories about why it is that they're not available. From the fact that, I don't know, Maisha number, delays, I don't know, there should be the technology, all this. But the thing is this, that if you really look at elections, the elections of 2027, from my readings, the only people who can really make a big difference is the Gen Zs, is the young people. Otherwise, already we almost do not have an opposition currently. The opposition is in bed with government, most of it. So we have Raila right now, who's together with the Kenya Kwanza. So we have ODM, is kind of like split in half. We have ODM A and B, and that half is in government. So, because of the fact that the opposition are so split up, it means that they are reinforcing the current government to win the election in 2027. So, but the only disruptor that could come about would be the young Gen Zs. If they decided to get their IDs and vote, they could make a huge difference and actually elect a totally different person. They can decide not to elect ODM or Kenya Kwanza and pick an independent candidate, one of their own, you know? So I think that there's a deliberate agenda to frustrate young people from registering and getting their IDs. I think this is the issue. That's how I look at it. That's the flip side. On one side, it looks like the government trying to facilitate people to get their IDs and for them to have, to have fairness and all that. And on the other hand, it looks as if the government is in a sinister way trying to expand their reach and trying to get more people to support them. Because of course, if he decides, to do away with these laws and these requirements, then he'll be popular. And many Somalis have said that they're going to vote Kenya Kwanza in the next general election.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is unfortunate if it's being used as a strategy really to get numbers, higher numbers,
Yeah.
So that they can get the 50+1 vote in 2027. And in fact, I've been looking at the newspaper. I think this is Sunday's newspaper, Daily Nation, and it talks about Ruto has made at least 46 visits styled as development tours in at least 30 counties in the last 145 days. And this is from October 1st, 2024. And this around the same time that they had, they were closing the move on Rigathi Gachagua, kicking him out of, they'd already started this campaign to get him out. I think it was, so they were talking about the counties. I was just looking at it. I don't know whether you can see this. Can you see this? Yeah. Okay. So anyway, this is what I'm looking at. And it's talking about what they say about his game plan. And what they've noticed is that he is concentrating on other counties and avoiding the Mount Kenya region completely. So not completely, just like visited. I can see only Kiambu here and Embu that he's been to. But when we talk about the border towns, we're talking about Wajir. He has been there 3 times. Garissa, he has been there 2 times. Mandera, he has been once, and Isiolo, he has been once. Yeah, so these are but Isiolo is not as badly affected as, it's not quite the border town as like Mandera, and I can't see Marsabit here, but Samburu is here as well, 1 time. Garissa is twice, Wajir is 3 times. So they were talking about they were saying this is part of his strategy for 2027. He's already on the campaign trail, but he's calling them development tours, and stuff like that. And so and we're looking also at the impact of these 2 visits to the Mount Kenya region and the reception he got, and perhaps why he's avoiding going there, and perhaps why they're looking for alternative spaces, a way to increase the numbers in the other places, because we know, even when we look at the number of voters registered in some of these places, these constituencies, they're not actually that many. So you can have many constituencies, but they're not so many people. But although the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission are supposed to equalize that, actually they're supposed to do, before every election, they're supposed to do a vetting to make sure that the constituencies plus or plus, is it plus or 30,000 or 30% larger. They can't be more like 50% larger. And that's why you find Nairobi, we ended up with 17 constituencies. Before there were, I can't remember how many, but there were few. So they had to break them up so that, there's balance, so that the voters, one vote makes sense, because what was happening actually in the coast, they had fewer people they were representing, but quite a number of MPs because of the area they were covering. Okay. And Nairobi, which had so many people, was represented by a fewer number of people. So the work of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission is really to make sure there's that sort of balance. So you can say my vote is one vote is counting. It's not like the coast was better represented in Parliament than actually Nairobi was at some point when you counted the numbers of people.
That's amazing, considering that Nairobi actually has the largest number of voters. Nairobi City
that's
has
why,
the largest number of voters in the country. So how can they have less MPs
that's what was there before.
compared to the coast, which has only like 2 million? It's
Yeah,
a much smaller number. Yeah, that's
yeah,
quite
that's why they,
interesting.
that's why they did that.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
he's talking about his campaign here. If I can just pick up some of the information that these analysts were talking about. They're saying that he's definitely on the campaign trail. We've seen the shifts in the broad-based government. We've seen him bringing in
Yeah.
people from the Mount Kenya region to be cabinet secretaries, like William Kabogo and Mutahi Kagwe are there. So William Kabogo is the ICT. I'm not sure how much ICT he knows, but anyway, he's the CS for ICT. And then we have Mutahi Kagwe, who's actually a journalist, if I'm not wrong. I think he's in the media, my memory served me right. I think he's a journalist or in the media field.
Mm-hmm.
He's in agriculture. And then
Agriculture,
we
yeah,
have
that's what I recall.
Lee Kinyanjui, who is in trade and investment. And
Mm-hmm.
you don't forget that he also brought in some ODM players into this broad-based government. And
Yeah,
so this
so my
analyst is
suspicions are
saying,
right. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah.
so
Mm-hmm.
this analyst is saying it is adopting Moi strategies, where he'd bring
Mm-hmm.
in the token people from the voter groups, blocks that have sort of resisted his voting for him, and he'd bring in the token representatives of that region. For instance, I don't know whether you remember J.J. Kamotho. You remember he was very powerful at one time. Yeah, he was
Mm-hmm.
very powerful, and he was, he was one of the very close friends of Moi. So they're saying that Ruto has taken a leaf out of Moi's playbook and is using the same thing. So this is, if I may use the word, some form of tokenism. So you give a representative that the optics that people are seeing is that, oh, we have a few people from here and here and here, but those people have low impact when it comes to their actual areas or what they're doing. So, and then he said here, the other place that he's seen that he's being really, he's working hard on is the churches. As a man of God, he's known to be a man of God, somebody who goes to church. And so he is going for what they're calling the ordinary clergy so that he can
Mm-hmm.
control them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's going for the other denominations, not just he's going for the denominations like the Akorino groups, which have like what he's calling, the political analyst here has called them huge cult-like following. People who just follow their leader without asking questions, which are easy to manipulate. So that seems to be the game he's playing. I was just connecting it to your, concern that and I've read it as well about getting those additional voters in, registering them in time for 2027. But then again,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the question that was asked is, how do you know they'll vote for you? You registered them. How do you where's the guarantee they'll actually vote for you? But I think they do. Maybe their behavior shows they will vote for the person who he who pays the piper calls the tune, sort of thing. Yeah. So it's very it's a quite a worrying thing to happen. And like you said, there's some people in other parts who have been waiting for IDs who will not get them. Not to mention, by the way, you have to pay now. You have to pay some money to get
That's what
the
they're
ID.
saying. The 1,000 shillings times 30 million people. How much is
Yeah.
that? It's a lot of money. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
actually, yeah, this is my thought. I'm just thinking myself. I'm thinking like an evaluator here. I actually had not read that, but for me, the way I look at it is that these young people, they have the numbers, so they can influence. They can influence the vote. But the problem with them is that they have to move away from handouts. This history, this culture of being given things for free. They need to mobilize also beyond social media and go down to the ground. Yeah. And they also need to constitute the IEBC. The government needs to constitute the IEBC. One of the problems with the Gen Zs is that, because they're actually the hope of Kenya, to be honest. 75%, they say 75% of all Kenyan young people are under the age of 35. Yeah. 75% of Kenya's population is under the age of 35. So if they all came together, they could vote out the current government. But then there's a couple of problems. Yeah. And one of the problems is that the disillusionment. Many of these young people, they don't take voting seriously. They believe that, their vote will not make any difference. All politicians are just the same. Yeah, they're upset about the fact that the current group of politicians failed to deliver for them. And basically, many of them might just decide, I'm not even going to go out that day. I'd rather sleep and watch TikTok or watch whatever I'm going to watch, Again, the other problem is that because they are hustling so much, even taking time out to go and do registration, to get their IDs, it means that, their survival is at risk. So for as long as this government keeps the young people unemployed and struggling economically, then they have a hand on them. Because the cost of living is still high, they still have to pay their rent, they have to buy food, and they will not go and vote. Yours and my vote doesn't count as much as the young people, the millennials and Gen Zs, especially, and anyone who's over the age of 18. Again, there's also problems with the registration process. The IDs, like I mentioned before, it's a requirement to register. If you don't have an ID, you don't have a vote. Young people need to know this, that even if there's a long registration process, please just go out there and, mobilize to get your national ID. This is the time now to work with your MP to make sure that you get your national ID.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very important because if they don't do it, then there's no point of talking on social media platforms. It's a mess. Yeah. And on the other hand, the issue is that there's no representation, the representation of their own representation. They should maybe come together and identify one of their own that they trust, and just everybody back that person if they really want to make a difference. Otherwise, right now, if they decide to align themselves with a disintegrated opposition like ODM that doesn't seem to have any grounding, then they're in trouble. They either have to go behind an independent candidate or look for another party or register a party and go behind that particular candidate. Again, the Gen Zs, they have very little trust in the system. They think it's going to be rigged. They think it's going to be a waste of time. But you see, the thing is that the electoral system is never going to be perfect. But if you have very big numbers voting, if you have 75, out of 75% of those under 35, if 50% of you vote, you will make a difference. So the idea of voter apathy, nobody should, really take it really serious. And that means also that beyond Instagram and TikTok and the rest, the young people need to actually go out and mobilize in communities, in little circles, using your platforms, other platforms to mobilize people, to get their IDs. Most important thing is get your IDs, because if the young people don't get their IDs before 2027, that's if they don't get their IDs this year and next year, especially this year, then you're not going to vote. And this is what worries me, that we have the government empowering those people in the north to get their IDs and passports. But then all the other young people who have been waiting for their passports and IDs, especially IDs, they have not been able to get them. Yeah. And so my issue is that young people need to focus on their own issues. Again, they also need to decide amongst themselves that they're not going to accept bribery and corruption, and that they're going to harp and focus on the issues that matter to them and to all of us, which is about jobs, it's about employment, it's about cost of living, it's about corruption, it's about education, it's about mental health, it's about your own well-being. And so young people have to just like basically ask the difficult questions and say, how are we going to solve youth unemployment? Because nobody seems to care. The government doesn't care about your unemployment. They want to pick you up and take you to other countries to go and work there. And that's creating a brain drain. Not only a brain drain, by the way, it's not just about brain drain. It's also causing mental health issues for many young people to be far away from their families. It means that it delays your ability to start families yourselves as young people. So it's about also voting not with your tribe, not looking at tribe or age, but looking at policy. Yeah, and what people stand for, people's values, morals, ethics, past performance. They say past performance is the best predictor of future performance. Yeah. So the idea of like just not complaining, do not complain all the time. Try to have the Gen Zs have to push. They have to push for change at the community level, at the ward level, at the village level. Yeah. So if they really want to have change, and then the other thing is that voter apathy also comes from the fact that maybe they're waiting for Trump to make a change, President Trump, to say something. No, he won't, because you know why? Trump is actually just focused on America right now. They're not really interested in the issues of Kenya, activism, elections. They don't really care too much. Yeah. What they actually are standing for is limited interference in countries, America first policy, trade and business interests, and things like that. So if you can maybe engage or interest the American government on things to do with trade and business, maybe at that point, maybe the Gen Zs can get a foot in or get heard. But the idea that you're waiting for some savior out there to come and help us, that's not going to happen. And the biggest risk that we are facing right now is that we will not have a one-term president. We'll probably have a 2 or 3-term president at this rate if Gen Zs do not go out there and register to vote and get their IDs. Because without an ID, you can open your mouth as loud as you want, but you won't vote. Yeah, you will not vote. And also, it's very important for people to consider the fact that you're young and you have the numbers. And you can make a difference. Voter apathy, is not something to be thinking of right now. Okay, we have somebody in the comment section who is saying something. Let me just read that comment there. Grace is saying, leaders are so desperate for the leadership seats that they give the youth incentive, quote unquote, incentive to support them. Unfortunately, that's no guarantee because dynamics are so many. That is so true. I really agree with you, Grace. These guys are desperate. It shows that when you hear them talking loudly and shouting from the rooftops and running like Susan is talking about, going to different places in the country, like I don't know how many times, how many visits, it means that they know they're losing. There's a high risk of them losing. And so this is the opportunity for young people to demand IDs and register to vote. Very important. There's no way that this, for example, the last election could have been rigged if the numbers were there. If there were enough numbers, if there were enough people who voted against Kenya Kwanza government, there's no way that they would have actually, quote unquote, rigged themselves to get in. No way. The numbers are very, very important. Go on, Susan, you're saying something.
Yeah, I just wanted to say first, The IBC, we're hoping to have new commissioners by, I think they said, either April or May, because the committee is going through the process. They received over 300 applications. And interestingly, I was looking at, Chebukati passed away on Thursday at the age of 63. Yeah, he was the former chairman of the IEBC. He passed away at age 63. So that's one thing. And the other thing is the pattern of behavior of the Gen Zs, the way they mobilize, and even the way they question. I think that is a very good culture that they have, wanting um, to exercise their rights. They know that what their rights are, and they're out there to speak about them and speak loudly about them. And as Queen Mo says, it is very important. It's not just about your numbers, it's about how many of you are registered to vote. So you need to get that done. You need to start working on it early so that even if you have to wait 2 years for your ID, by the time you get round to the election, at least you'll have it. You'll have your IDs. Yeah, and what and the other thing
Yeah,
I was
but
just thinking about.
Susan, 2 years is 2027. That would be too late.
No,
That would be
yeah, it's
way too late.
unfortunate. I'm saying
They
even
they
if they
need to
have to wait,
push their MPs to get IDs. Yeah,
that's
in time.
true. Yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I agree with you completely. And like the issue here again is Ruto's game plan. We can see it very clearly that he's about avoiding the Mount Kenya region, and so he's we're not sure whether he's trying to make that region irrelevant or feel that they're irrelevant or whatever it is. In fact, what the political analyst that I was looking at was saying that Moi did not have the support of that region, that he survived as president for 24 years. But so maybe he's adopting that strategy as well, which means again, um, the coalitions that are formed at this point in time, we're expecting to see some changes actually this year in the way that the parties are going to come together and see, because they're talking about having a strong opposition. But what I find, for me, one of the saddest things is that you start off the politicians start off as opposition members, and all of a sudden they start crossing the boundaries until we don't have an effective uh, coalition, and then they're actually ensuring that the constitution that took us over 10 years to make and to pass, um, is rendered sort of is watered down, because the work of the various institutions, they're not able to operate, because for right now we have the executive, the parliament, which is under executive capture. They are controlled by the executive, which is unfortunate. And now the last institution which is also suffering from their control is now even the judiciary, where we're getting all these judgments which don't make any sense. And right now we have petitions filed against to remove all the judges of the Supreme Court, which is likely now to cause another problem, because if luckily there's a judge who has stopped that, because two judges filed cases to stop that. They got orders, conservatory orders, to stop the petitions, and saying that the JSC does not have any authority or power
Yeah,
to
I saw that.
actually
Yeah.
adjudicate against them. And so
Mm-hmm.
we're having our institutions being attacked, but not for the right reasons. And you can see the one of the petitions that is attacking the judges is because the judges said they no platformed senior counsel Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi. They wrote to him and said, we're not going to entertain you in our court. And
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately, that extended to even his office workers, the other counsel in his office. So they were all tarred with the same brush. So they brought
Mm-hmm.
that petition. And that seems to me to be something really personal. When you're talking about, a certain individual has been told you cannot appear before us. instead of
Mhm.
finding other ways to deal with it in terms of why don't they get on and why can't this thing be dealt with in a different way, rather than say we'd rather create what you're calling a constitutional crisis. If you remove all judges, that means that you're telling us we should have, in fact, one of the arguments is that the constitution doesn't envisage a situation where the Supreme Court does not exist. So it's like a
Aha.
constitutional crisis. And then what happens again is that
Exactly. And writing, sorry, let me interrupt you just there. Wait, that's exactly what I'm thinking, that there's a lot of distraction, and that is moving the eyes of the Gen Zs away from what they should be focusing on, which is registration, IDs. In fact, the only thing that should be on the mouth of Gen Zs right now for the next 1 year, I could tell them, is IDs, registration, IDs, registration. No matter what they're saying, they're removing the high court judges, IDs, registration, IDs, registration, because that's where you have the power. You don't have any power anyway. You cannot influence the judges. You cannot influence what the government is doing out there. We saw, Susan, let me just add another thing. There's so many distractions, unfortunately, and some of them are even costing lives. We've seen that there's a tourist, a foreign worker, a foreign person who was found, whose body was found. He was actually, kidnapped or abducted, and his body found somewhere. Yeah. These to me are, they get into the point where they're starting to look like distractions to me. We have Kenya Airways, whose pilot, which has got into agreement with some United Arab Emirates, the Emirates company, to give them pilots. They're actually working with a British-based university to train pilots. So we don't have enough pilots, but we're ready to give away. So Kenya Airways is upset that they're training pilots, and there's a plan. Let me actually read it here. Kenya Airways boss slams the Labour CS Mutua over Etihad. It's actually Etihad pilot deal, and they're calling it a brain drain. So the London Metropolitan University will see Kenya Airways staff undertake undergraduate and graduate aviation courses from UK-based institutions. So the idea is that Etihad wants our pilots. Etihad. So we're not just looking for workers for the houses anymore. Now we're looking for professionals, and we don't have enough of them. We could be building a fleet in Kenya, the biggest fleet in Africa, and having the most well-trained pilots. You will almost never see Ethiopian pilots, flying for Kenya Airways. Ethiopians are proud people. They have, they fly for Ethiopian Airlines, and they've grown that airline. So I'm looking at all these things that are going on, and I'm saying all these are distractions. So Susan, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't want to distract you. I just wanted to
yeah,
mention, that to me, when you talk about constitutional crisis with the judges, it goes beyond the judges, even to private sector. They're using anything just to distract young people from what's important, and not just young people, anybody who is not registered or who has lost their ID need to replace it. Again, they've also made it so expensive. Yeah,
yeah.
1,000 shillings to get an ID, or is it to replace
Mm.
your ID? Yeah,
It's to
it's so
replace.
expensive. I think it's
I
a
think it's
thousand
to
shillings to
replace.
replace your ID and
Yeah,
a certain
yeah.
yeah. So there are many people who have misplaced their IDs. Yeah, and so it's very expensive. A lot of people won't be able to afford it. And to me, again, this is a strategy, because my question is, there are people being issued IDs right now for free. Others have to pay 1,000 bob to replace their IDs, and they may not come in time. So the only one thing that should be on the mouth of every Kenyan is, do I have an ID? Am I registered to vote?
Yeah, and
And
I
where
think
am I?
also,
Another very important question is, where am I registered to vote? Last year, we saw a situation where, not last year, but the last election, we saw people who are registered to vote in a specific place find out at the last minute that their vote has been transported 1,000 kilometers away from where they normally vote. Or the voting station is another 100 kilometers away, and they're 99 years old and they can't walk, or they're 80 years old and they cannot walk, or they don't have transport to get to that place. So you need to know where you have been. And the only way to know is through IEBC. And if IEBC is not constituted, then it's almost impossible for you. To me, I think this is wrong, completely wrong. Those
Yeah.
elections should be
No,
only
no.
held if everything is in place.
Yeah, I think the IBC protocols are that you are given an opportunity to verify your polling station. So you can actually go and look and check the register at your polling station, where physically you can go and check the register before the elections. I know that's what happened in the past 2 elections. That's what they did. So you could go and check and make sure, oh, I'm here, not there. People did find
Actually,
out
they
even at
provided
that
an
point.
SMS number. They provided a number on the
That was
phone,
the
on
other
a
way.
mobile number.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
2022 they did. So either
yeah.
physically or on phone, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, that was the other way that people were doing. But the other thing is maybe for people to be to make sure that we have the latest generation of ID cards. The reason why I'm saying this is that there's this new the seniors money, that like a pension of 2,000 shillings per month. It's now been they used to travel to the banks to go and get the 2,000 shillings per month, but now um, um, Ruto said it should be sent by it should be sent by M-Pesa to their phones. And this is senior citizens. These are people who are 70
Mhm.
plus,
Mhm.
70 plus, orphans, and also disabled people. So now what's happened is that the senior citizens have not got their money because there are issues with their SIM cards on their phones. And the registration of their SIM cards. There are issues with that. The other thing is apparently the system does not recognize 7-digit ID numbers, and some people's ID numbers have seven digits, so they're not getting their money. So instead of coming through adopting a phased approach to it, the president just makes this announcement and it's effective immediately, and it's not a phased approach. So because they've not been able, there's issues with their phone, there's issue with their SIM card, there's issues, the system they're using cannot recognize 7-digit ID numbers. And there's a problem. So the good it was supposed to do by saving people traveling long distances is not working. And the other point they said is some of the IDs were too old. So I don't know which IDs they're talking about that they have. Maybe they have the first ones we were ever given in the 80s and beyond. I'm not sure which ones they are, but I think it's good for people to be prudent and really make sure that their IDs, you can read the details on them well. A photocopy, a colored photocopy, which is laminated, will not do. You need the actual ID card. And seniors actually are supposed to be treated with lots of respect when you go to apply for your ID, because seniors, we need you to vote too, not just 70 plus. We need you to vote too, not just the Gen Zs. I was just going to comment about the behavior of the Gen Zs. The way they move together, they're able to mobilize themselves to do stuff, to respond to certain issues, to raise certain issues. They were able to, the shock of, the amazing things they did 2023, 2024, when they mobilized themselves, and they say they are tribeless. And that's true. For these Gen Zs and millennials, those things don't mean
Yeah,
anything
and
to them.
leaderless,
They,
which is still a good
mm,
idea. They need to continue to not have a leader yet, you know?
yeah,
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 because I can
they think,
expose them to risk. Yeah, that's just a fact. Yeah.
yeah,
But on the other
they
hand,
think,
Susan, you also saw, as much as we want to praise Gen Zs, we also want to identify the weaknesses of Gen Zs, which is we have seen that some of the Gen Zs have been compromised. They have not been able to stand up and say no to bribery, no to the money. Stand up for principle. Difficult for young people because they're jobless, unemployed, or they're ignorant. They think that you can go into the lion's den and sort out issues from there. No, you'll be swallowed up in the lion's den if you go in. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like actually I'm going to solve things from the inside. No, it doesn't. You have to stay on the outside. It's a matter of principle so that people can trust you, and also that you create a personality And this is the reason why freedom fighters all over the world who are respected never allowed themselves to be swallowed by the system. Never. Never compromised. Yeah, so I feel really strongly about this for the young people, that even as the older people like ourselves, we should be encouraging young people to go and register, get their IDs for voting. Regardless of what's going on, work on getting your ID. Now, the other thing that Susan mentioned there is what type of ID. There's also the electronic ID. I don't know, Maisha number, Sijui Nini, and it's important to know which ID you're going to get, which ID you're going to be getting. And the reason why, I don't know why this discussion is stressing IDs, but I think it's because in my research, I discovered that this is the most critical element going forward. Otherwise, there shall be no change. Guaranteed, there shall be no change. And let me play something for you guys. Let me play something before
Let
Susan
me just talk
responds.
about the IDs. Just you need to
It's also
vote.
about the ID, Susan. This is also about the ID. Let me just play it first, Kidogo, and then you can respond probably in addition to this. One sec. Okay. Playing.
As we sit today, we have what I may call, I hope I am not going to irritate anybody, but we are used to it. I may call ODMB. We now have ODM. You can clearly see some two very vicious groups in ODM. So it's really, you can say you have ODM A, ODM B. Yeah. B that has decided that we are supporting the current regime, even come 2027, we'll vote for them. A that is completely at variance with that. Right. When you go again to UDA, you literally have UDA A, which is stuck with government, and UDA B, which is stuck with Gachagua. And you can now see the UDA B is trying to play opposition politics, and they're in government. So they are sitting inside government and trying to play opposition politics. We have ODMB seated in opposition, but trying to play government. These two units, ODMB and UDAB, if I was seated in State House, is good music. Because those are the ones that are likely to guarantee William Ruto another 5-year term.
Where do you sit?
I am not in any of those, and I wasn't wearing sufuria because I had any intention of getting anywhere near that.
Right.
It's very clear in my mind. If this confusion that they have brought into the opposition continues, that is a way of giving another 5-year term to the sitting president.
Yeah. Okay, Susan, go ahead and respond.
No, it's unfortunate because definitely they've caused a lot of confusion. Even the public are divided also along those lines. So you have the ODM people who are supporting broad-based, even the members of the public, and those who are not. They are saying they are in the opposition, and that is their job. Sifuna, who is a senator, I think he's the Secretary General of ODM. He's very, very clear that he is, ODM is supposed to be the opposition party. Then, of course, you have the UDA again with that split, just the way Kioni has explained. And that is something that, is very concerning that, in fact, I heard them saying that he's mischievous. The president is mischievous because this is playing mischief by actually disrupting the lines that these people should be adhering to, because in other words, they're not even respecting the votes of those who voted them in, because we made our decisions as we voted, and we knew this person is in this party and they're in this coalition. So that it was quite a deliberate thing. When people were voting, they knew that this was either a Kenya Kwanza person or an Azimio person. And if there was a particular party, they knew which party they were also supporting. And so when they change that and the politicians completely ignore those issues, this is the type of mess we're seeing. But I think it's something that is very, very deliberate. It's a way of controlling people and coercing them. Same thing with the giving the money to the seniors. Same thing with the IDs. these are ploys to gain favor. And this, this is what do Ruto's visits say? What is his game plan? Even at this time, he even talked about a road, that, the Lapset corridor issue. And he talked about a road. And the young people have even made a song. I sent you a video. Did you see it? They've even made a song of all the names.
Yeah, but
I
I've
was
been
thinking,
seeing it. I've been seeing a lot of those videos. Yes, and he's
there
pretty
are even
upset about that.
t-shirts.
Yeah,
There are even t-shirts.
mockery.
He's promised
T-shirt.
to build. Yeah, it's like a 750-kilometer road from Isiolo to Mandera, or Mandera to Isiolo, and it's part of the Lapset corridor highway that's supposed to, I think, connect Lamu, Kenya, Ethiopia, and Sudan, southern Sudan. Supposed to be, a beautiful road that's supposed to be. There's supposed to be like a trade route along it. That's the dream. That's there. It's with funding from the World Bank and the ADB, and also apparently some Arab banks too. They're supposed to be, that's supposed to be a trade route. So that also he's talking about that. He's talking about, he's going to make sure that road is built. So he's out there. He knows, like you mentioned, he's looking for a constituency that is really going to counter the votes of those people he doesn't expect to get support from. But the Gen Zs are tribeless, and they don't understand that concept at all. They don't get it. They look at somebody and they want the issues. Don't forget, even him having to deal with the current president, having to deal with the issue of honesty and integrity. Nobody believes him, and that's why they've started singing the songs. And it's young people, by the way. It's the same Gen Zs who are singing the song with all the names of the road, all the names of the areas, the places where that road is going to pass through. They're actually quite funny videos and memes as well. And they're even making T-shirts. So definitely it's been quite a campaign. And of course the news also was looking at Raila's options now that he lost the AUC bid.
Oh
What
yeah.
are his options? There were 4 of them. They've talked about cementing the relationship with the president, with the executive. The second is continuing to extract concessions from the president, whilst claiming not to be part of Kenya Kwanza. So they're still the opposition. The third is reigniting his criticism, playing opposition politics completely, And the fourth is reaching out to opposition allies. So really taking the number 3 and 4 is now playing the opposition game, And then some of the concerns are emerging are that will he be the people's defender, or will he be broad-based in the truest sense in terms of being absorbed by the government, want to go into 2037 together? Although I heard Gladys Wanga, and I think she could be from ODM B or A, I'm not sure which one it is, but she's completely different from, she said ODM has their presidential candidate. So they're not supporting Ruto. And then the other thing is the tensions.
And who is that? Who is their presidential candidate? ODM.
She didn't say who it was, but she said we have
Could
our
it be
own.
Sifuna? Who could it be? Could it be Edward Sifuna, or could it be the other young man, Owino?
Babu
Who could it
Owino.
be?
By the way, Babu Owino he scored the highest in terms of being the best MP. I think he got the best vote. Yeah. Babu Owino.
So why don't the Gen Zs, flock around him? So actually, where is Raila? Where is he? Where does he stand? What is his stand? It's a terrible thing, by the way, what's going on in Kenya right now. It's a mess.
Yeah, but when you look at it, if you look at the way he operates, I think he gets mileage from really putting a lot of pressure on the winning side to accommodate his side. And we've seen that in the past presidencies. We've seen it with Kibaki, where there was Mkate Nusu. We saw it also in the BBI during Uhuru's second term. And now we're seeing it in the first term again, where they're able to negotiate. I think he uses his sheer numbers in parliament because, truth be told, I think the largest party, not coalition, the largest party, the party with the largest number of MPs, at least in the National Assembly, is ODM. Yeah, so they have that popularity. So those are some of the concepts. And then something else again, still in Parliament, is the stalemate on House committees in the National Assembly. The stalemate is because of two particular House committees, and that is the Budget and Appropriations Committee, BAC, and the Finance and National Planning Committee, which is Finance, which is at the center of the conflict, because ODM wants to be there. They want to chair those two committees, but traditionally, I think those two committees are usually chaired by the majority party. And of course, there's that issue now that we're dealing with in Parliament about who is the majority party. Although it was settled by the courts saying Kenya Kwanza was not the majority party, we saw Wetangula making an announcement in a different direction. Personally, my own assessment of that is that the courts made an adjudication or a decision based on the IEBC Gazette notice after the election. And that election showed that Azimio had more MPs than Kenya Kwanza. And if we determine that everything is determined at the ballot box, then it's very important for us to take that Gazette notice very seriously. In fact, the argument of the judges is that there's no that the Speaker of the National Assembly cannot interfere with that particular declaration of the IBC, because they have declared what was declared by the people who voted at the ballot box. But he has chosen now to look at changes that have occurred post-elections, even getting some document from the registrar of political parties to say, oh, these people are here to reflect the movement. But the truth of the matter, and the right way, in my view, of looking at it is that doesn't count. What counts is that where were those parties before the elections? When people voted, they knew that somebody was represented. If they voted, them would be for Azimio or Kenya Kwanza, or be Third Way Alliance, or be for, I think there was Agano Party, and there's Wajakoya's. I've forgotten what Wajakoya's party was called. But people were quite aware of what they were doing. These post-election alliances, again, in my view, quite mischievous. And in fact, this is just something that characterizes, if you ask me, this is my personal opinion, characterizes the Kenya Kwanza modus operandi, the mischief of realizing you don't have enough seats to win any vote, and thinking that you must have enough seats, the majority seats, to control what is happening, and in the National Assembly, because of the voting blocks. So you start to stir the pot and get people to cross over from one side to the other, which is to me quite mischievous. So what has happened with regard to these two House committees? Raila has summoned Millie Odhiambo and Junet Mohammed to Dubai to talk to them. He's doing something in Dubai right now, so he has summoned them to talk to them about this, because there's a proper stalemate, and the issue was actually referred now to Ruto and to Raila to deal with it. Then, of course, the issue of the Supreme Court judges. They have challenged the petitions for that seek to remove them from the court. There's that issue of the constitutional crisis. There will be creation of a vacuum if there are no judges, and that actually gives rise to, when there's a constitutional crisis, can lead to declaration of a state of emergency. But the very institution that's supposed to declare that there's a state of emergency, or rather to validate whether or not the situation is fit for a state of emergency, is the Supreme Court of Kenya. So, that would create a serious
Interesting. Interesting.
crisis. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
because I
and
did
then,
see somebody say that I saw somebody say that the reason why they want to get rid of Martha Koome, the Chief Justice, is because they want to declare a state of emergency. Apparently, now you say that can't be done without the Supreme Court. You need the
yeah, they're the
Supreme Court
ones
to
who,
do that.
yeah, if there's
I
a
mean, not
challenge,
just
they will,
Martha Koome, but her and all the judges, all of them.
yeah, yeah,
They want to dissolve it literally, you know. But
yeah. The
before we go
problem
ahead,
is that,
let me read a comment from one of our people here. They say it may be fashionable to be leaderless and tribeless, but what was the final agenda? They breached parliament and then question mark they died on the street. The level of heat needed to needed a concrete end game. The level of heat needed a concrete end game. Okay, just keep that one in mind as you respond to the issue of the judges.
yeah. So actually, let me just respond first to what they've said. That's
Okay.
very true, because I remember what happened. They said that the Gen Z movement was hijacked. It was a group of people who just
Mhm.
hijacked it, and it was supposed to be a peaceful protest. In fact, when many of the young people saw things were spiraling out of hand, they actually withdrew from it, and they didn't go out again for any more of the marches, because they sensed that there was a group of people there who had a different agenda from theirs. The intention of the Gen Zs was really just to come out and make their voice heard and to protest. They had no intention, at least my understanding of it, and all the young people around, when you talk to them or whatever, was really just to be heard, to stand together. They were most, among the group that's most affected by the finance bill that was being put there. They were saying the argument was that our parents are being affected and it affects us, or we are affected directly by some of the things that were being passed. So definitely, I agree with you that end game, that result was not right. Whatever happened, it became an animal, and it just took a life of its own. And
Yeah.
that was not the intention of the Gen Zs. But going back
Certainly
to the,
not, Susan. And also, no, let me also say something there. In addition to that, the government is, like you say, Susan, you taught us, government is duty bearer for the security of Kenyans, including protests are not illegal. Yeah, shooting a young person at point blank range as they stand outside of parliament, there's no excuse. We cannot blame it now on the victim. We cannot blame it on the victim and say they breached parliament. And then, even if they breach parliament, do they deserve to be shot? Do they deserve to have their brains splattered on the ground? Do they? In other countries, would they do this? We saw in the US during Trump's first term in 2018, we saw a whole bunch of Americans, conservative Americans, go in there with guns inside the state, inside the White House with guns. And what happened to them? They were jailed. And then what happened this time? Trump actually forgave them. He pardoned them, and they're free now. They were jailed. Nobody was killed. This culture of ours of taking life is a problem. And we're not going to sit here and tolerate anything to do with blaming the victim, blaming the Gen Zs. They're young people, like they were infiltrated by goons. We are aware about that. I myself have experienced through a friend who accompanied her child on that day, her children on that day, because they were insisting on going. And you know, when the Gen Zs say they're going, they are going. And as a parent, as a mother, you know, there's no way you'll allow your child to go into danger zone. You'd rather go with them. So there are many parents who accompany their young children. But when they started to hear, you know, gunshots, they started to smell the gunshot fire, they ran back to the car and they drove away. So they managed to get there. So what I'm saying is that there was no reason to use live bullets. There was no reason for that. So the idea of saying the level of heat needed a concrete end game, I don't think that that sounds to me like blaming the victim, unless maybe I misunderstood. Maybe you can, unless, yeah. No, the government has complete responsibility for whatever happened on that day. Yeah, complete responsibility.
Certainly, it's constitutional for you to have peaceful protest. They should have, that there was a deliberate intention to disrupt them deliberately, because the previous days they were very peaceful, very peaceful. I mean, we saw people went and came back. They went and they came back and stuff like that. In fact, that do you know the one for what was it? And femicide. You saw they started beating those young people. Why? They were just walking the streets because they're saying end femicide, say no to
Not even
femicide.
young people, they were beating women. The police were beating
Yeah,
women, protesters,
yeah.
peaceful
So
protesters. Hmm.
yeah, that type of intolerance is unacceptable, and it's even unconstitutional. And I hope that
Totally.
with the videos that they had, in
Hmm.
fact that they're going to be able to capture those people
Yeah.
who did such bad things to them.
Yeah,
So
yeah. There was
definitely,
also indiscriminate. There was also indiscriminate killings of young people who are not even involved at all
yeah,
in even in the riots itself. Even I think the first victim, that young man. It's so
yeah,
unfortunate. A child is coming down a building and has got his rucksack on. Is like, boop, gone. Why? Because you're exercising your constitutional right. I think we should mature as a democracy, and we should stop that, because even like in countries like the UK, people protest. And you see the police out on their horses, and they do not shoot anyone in the crowd.
yeah,
The crowds can
yeah,
get very, very unruly, by the way. They can get dangerous and they can get unruly, but you'll never in your wildest dream hear of a police murdering anyone. No, that doesn't happen. Not in developing countries, not in developed countries. It's only in Kenya where this is happening, and currently under the current regime, where you see young people. Why would they do that, really? To me, that really, really irks me. That really irks me. So the issue is, yes, and also we should not sanitize our country too much, because the fact is that Gen Zs are afraid, of course, because if there's fear of political violence and intimidation. Okay, police brutality is not new in Kenya. Youth-led protests lead to police violence. Okay, and therefore they're afraid of engaging politically. Yet we are saying that we should encourage public participation. Public participation is something that is enshrined in our constitution. Yeah, because that's the only way to ensure peaceful elections. This elections is a public participation. How are young Gen Zs going to go out to vote? How will they be able to get out and vote when there are election observers there to monitor that the vote was exercised peacefully and democratically? How will they go out to vote if when they go out there they stand the risk of losing their lives? Really, I mean, would you, as a parent of a young Gen Z, be comfortable that your child has gone out there with their ID card to vote? Voter intimidation will be there too. What about if, they are intimidated? What about if they are abducted? We have to get to the point where we mature as a democracy. We have to mature as a country and take responsibility for what went wrong. And that needs to be investigated. And the perpetrators brought to book before the next election. Yeah, I've said that.
yeah,
It should
yeah,
happen before the next election. Otherwise, what are we doing? How can we have another public participation like an election under the circumstances that we have in the country right now, with the abductions ongoing, right now we have 5 chiefs in the northern part of the country who are missing. They were abducted. And we're planning elections, voter registrations. How are we going to do that? Yeah. And we just lost the IEBC chair anyway, and we don't even know why. Our country right now, like we're saying, a lot of people have been saying we should brace. We should be careful. We should brace. Our country is not in the situation where we are ready for anything. We're not ready for anything. We need to sort out what's our internal wrangles and create a safe space, a safe country for all Kenyans.
Yeah, I think even planning an election is really, really tough. It's one of those jobs, being the chair or even the commissioners of the IBC. I think it's one of the most thankless jobs, a very, 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 very tough job. Lots of interference from the political class and the presidential candidates, lots of, or other influential figures. We've seen the drama at, what's that place called? Bomas, We've seen the
Mm-hmm.
drama, the fighting, and the quiet, and then all of a sudden we see an announcement after that. The whatever, the counting goes off, it's switched off, and there's a
Oh
blank
yeah,
screen for a while, and then we see,
yeah.
that type of
Very high
drama.
risk job. Very high risk
Yeah.
jobs. Those commissioners,
Oh,
and yeah, see what happened. To Msando, what happened to Chebukati, what's happening. To some
true.
of the commissioners who are returning the votes. One of them, we know the stories. We read newspapers. We hear. We know. So very
Yeah.
dangerous jobs. Very dangerous. Some people have had to go into exile from the last
Yeah.
IEBC. They've left the country.
Yeah.
That's the kind of environment that we are thinking that we can run an election in. Are you sure? Are we ready for an election in the first place in 2027? Security wise, are we?
Yeah.
Question mark.
Definitely, the security issue is quite serious. I mean, of course, we've been having the abductions, for people saying or doing things that don't make some people happy, or even the unaliving of women, that sort of thing happening. We're finding that in the family front, there's been like family annihilation going on. And then again, like I said earlier in the show, I talked about the Oromo Liberation Army coming all the way down into Ethiopia, and they have like 12 camps in that region, and they've got, it's literally narcotics, all this contraband.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've
Mm-hmm.
had to have this specialized police unit go there and fight them. But they've
Mm-hmm.
been there for 32 years. For
Mm-hmm.
32 years,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so the security issue needs to be taken, much, much more seriously than
Mm-hmm.
than we do, because they've actually been terrorizing the people who live in that region, forcing them to do all types of things. And we are grateful at least the police were able to get hold of some of the drugs and destroy them and all that type of stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
going back to the court system, I mean to the Supreme Court of Kenya, judges being threatened to be, I mean, with the petitions that are pending before them, pending to have them removed, and all of them removed, not one, not two, all of them, in itself is something of great concern. I talked about the Inua Jamii, that's the retirees uh, and Ruto M-Pesa rule, where he said the money should be sent through M-Pesa. And of course, the difficulty it's causing. Why start something that's going to cause further hardship? Definitely, you can see this is also a campaign strategy,
Mm-hmm.
to make sure that they have easy access to the money. But they forgot to check whether the framework supports that change. And then we have our own Dodge in Kenya. We have they're called the Intergovernment Relationship Technical Committee. And what they did is they were supposed to, they're called austerity measures, and they're supposed to reduce 42 agencies into 20. I think you've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
as a result of these mergers and restructuring and dissolution of some of the institutions, job loss follows. And we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about reduction from 42 to 20 in this environment. You can just imagine how many people are going to lose their jobs. And one of
Mm-hmm.
the things, it was an efficiency model, really, because they were saying that at the state level, there were some institutions that were replicating the work that's being done at the county level. So they were trying to get rid of those. But that's no mean task, because you're getting rid of, uh, you know, 22 institutions. Um, yeah, and they're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be ready. They're supposed to have the
Mm-hmm.
20 institutions out of 42 by the end of March, which is next month. so that they can start funding the 20 institutions through the next fiscal year. The other thing, of course, is the SHA boycott by the RUFA hospitals. Those are the rural, urban, and private hospitals. They've said, they actually announced it last week. They said we're not anybody's coming with SHA to our hospitals. We're sorry. As a new patient, by the way, when we can't help you because there's this spending money under NHIF that has not been paid, and that needs to be sorted out. So about 600 hospitals are doing this. So they've suspended services because of the issue. So they said they're not going to serve. They're saying they're overdue claims by SHA itself. So even the new claims under SHA, leave alone the NHIF historical debt, under SHA as well, this money is not being paid, which really doesn't come as a surprise when we look at the situation. But the exceptions for emergency services, which, by the way, emergency healthcare is a constitutional right. So if somebody is rushed to hospital under emergency, you must be treated. That's your constitutional right. The government is your duty bearer there. And treatment of patients already undergoing treatment, those are exempted. So the people affected are non-emergency patients and police and teachers who fall under what they call the Medical Administrator Kenya Limited, MAC-L. They will not be served. And we know how much we value our teachers and our police. So and
this is getting from bad to worse. The teachers and police cannot get access to healthcare.
Yeah.
And the military have to buy their own food, Susan.
Yeah.
Apparently their salaries are going to be increased kidogo so that they buy their own food. And they've said that in no government in this world does the military have to buy their own food. I mean, looking in as a citizen, as a citizen of the country, as a public participation. This is public participation, guys. This is for public participation only. And we're asking the questions. Where are we going with our country? Where are we going? If the police and the teachers cannot be served in hospitals, who are we serving? Who is the hospitals going to be serving? Who? Yeah. Because majority of the people employed in this world are teachers and in this country. And there are so many police. Just imagine you call the police to help you want a police ambulance to take you to the hospital where the police themselves cannot be served.
They have to pay.
You guys, we're joking around. We're joking around with our country. This is a mess. It's a complete mess. No,
yeah,
this is not going to work.
They're saying that they're not able to get any conversation. There's no structure on how things are going to be paid or when they're going to be paid. So there's no agreement. So they're just sort of, the hospitals themselves are, facing closure because of lack of funds.
Of course,
because of
they're going to be
huge
closed
debt
at this rate.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did see. I think it was the person who is in charge of the health. The parliamentary group that sits on health, and he was talking about the fact that these are just teething problems. These are teething problems, and he's a doctor himself. And I don't know where I wrote those notes. I think maybe next time I'll come in with them. But I saw that he was saying that these are teething problems, and he understood. And he was talking about the fact that perhaps this was actually on Spice FM, and it was Ndu who was talking there. I think she was chairing that discussion, and it was a very heated discussion, and it was quite interesting. It was interesting to find out that they have a poor communication strategy. Meanwhile, that particular program is actually sponsored by a private health insurance company called Jubilee Insurance, who do a very good job of communicating. And the person was saying that actually now we see how the program is being sponsored by a private insurer, but the public insurer has done a very poor job of communicating how people can register, what services are available for the money, how much money they should pay, what are the premiums, how they should pay them, what they'll be what type of treatment they'll be accessing, which level hospital they should go to for what kind of treatment, level 1, 2, 3, as opposed to 4, 5, 6. Different hospital levels offer different types of treatments. So if you have a headache, you go to this level. If you're pregnant, you go to that one. If you go, so there's a lot of things that we are not aware of as the users of SHA, or SHIF, contributors to SHIF. And that's because of poor communication by SHA and SHIF. Again, there was the issue of the NHIF outstanding payments that were due and when they're going to be paid. And I believe that there's a meeting that is actually already planned to discuss this issue. And NHIF have been asked to actually present the amounts of outstandings that is owed to service providers, the private hospitals. Apparently, the private hospitals can get access to funding easier than the public hospitals. And this is the reason why. This is from SHA. They can get access to remuneration from SHA easier than the public hospitals. And probably this is why the teachers and the policemen are being affected, because the public hospitals seem to be having a more difficult time accessing these funds. And apparently, the funds are already there. There are funds available in these various hospitals, but if somebody attends one hospital to get one type of service, they are not told by that hospital to go, that they're in the wrong hospital. They need to go to a different level 3 or level 4 hospital to get that particular type of treatment. So that person goes back home. Yeah, let's say they have dialysis need. They go back home and they die just because information was not passed along. And so, what is the responsibility of government if somebody was to lose their life just because they didn't have the right information? If I think about when I compare living in those developed countries with Kenya, is that, for example, do you know that even public toilets have this information on the doors? Yeah, they actually have a sticker note, like if you're experiencing gender-based violence, call this number. In the women's toilets, they have that information. If you're pregnant or if you have a mental health condition, you call this number. Government services are everywhere. The information is everywhere. And it's very important that people have the information and know how to access it. There's no point of having a service and it be not accessed and the money just be returned back to Treasury because it wasn't absorbed and just because people don't have the information.
Yeah, communication is really important, and let's hope that Parliament in this session will try to at least pass the public participation act that's been pending for a long time. Like I said one time, that I saw a bill dated 2018, so there's been no movement on that. And then the conflict of interest bill, which is really controls and manages how the parliamentarians will behave in terms of doing things which are conflicting, like trading, or when they're the ones who are managing the constituency funds, and so they have that leeway where there's nepotism and whatever else is going on. So there's some acts which they're not very keen on passing because it will implicate, or it will have negative impact on some of the things that they felt free to do. It will limit their power and their control to some degree, which is really of concern. Again, more stringent and more adventurous and innovative ways of really looking at the security issue, particularly with regard to women. They really need to up and strengthen that legal framework that protects people, because gender-based violence is both against men and women. Really strengthens it and protects our people. Something else that I came across which was really interesting was is in the Sunday Nation. Cloud of mystery cloaking local public debt payments. And that was something they talked about. So they were saying that what they were saying is that it's not clear how the debts are being paid, the local debts are being paid, but what they're doing is being done manually instead of electronically. So it's like cash and in dollars. And so this is the report from the controller of the budget, Margaret Nyakango, and she was sort of concerned about it, that this money is being paid in cash and in dollars. It's being done manually, so there's no way of really tracing it or tracking it.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
amazing.
So
Wow.
if I can find this, and she said, where did she say that? She talked about public debt has been one of our major headaches as a country. Yet now we are being told that these payments have been processed manually. The question we must ask is why,
Mm-hmm.
and the bank must help us get answers. So the local banks are getting this money, but it's being done manually. So a government with all its systems online, why should we pay our debt manually?
That's amazing because they do have the IFMIS. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
they do
being
have
done manually.
they have a system. Yeah, integrated financial management information system. That is
Yeah,
what they use at the Treasury. They also use that, everywhere. Ministry of Finance, they should be using that. So that's that way everybody can track the payment, including the donors, by the way. So that's kind of
yeah.
strange. Yeah.
So she says here, the controller of budget says, I must raise this issue with the National Treasury in writing because I
Mhm.
now have enough data. Why are we still making payments manually when we have an automated system? At the end of the quarter, they submit lump sum returns which still lack specifics on how the money was spent.
Mhm.
We have had to reject some of the returns because they lack details. And this has been the concern because when we ask what is our debt really, apparently we can't even get a clear answer about how much money we actually
Yeah.
owe.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's the
So
reason why we
that's
need this Jim. What's his name? Jimmy, to tell
one
us.
ticket.
Yes, exactly. Wanjigi, Jimmy Wanjigi, to help us. But again, this is now where the role of the Auditor General comes into place. And the thing is also, of course, Margaret Nyakango, it's her job to educate us as a public, let us know what's going on. She's in charge. And I really like that woman. She's a very strong woman. And actually, we have two very strong women who are overseeing our finances. One of them is the Auditor General and also herself now, the Controller of Budget. Amazing women. And the two of
Yeah.
them, hey, they're very open and honest. They tell us what's going on. But you
So she
remember what
says
happened
here,
to poor Margaret Nyakango the last time. She faced it. So I think that I really appreciate, these are the kinds of Kenyans who deserve accolades. They deserve
yeah,
respect. Yeah, they deserve respect. And these are the kinds of people that we need in government. People who are honest, forthright, you know,
yeah.
and
She
ready,
said,
yeah, to tell the public the truth.
she says here, uh, her office is unable to track payments and requisitions done manually, since such payments leave no traceable documents for review. And they're talking about payments, amount of money that national governments paid local banks in dollar denominations in January 2025 for the KQ guarantee was 19.6 billion. So, the comment is, it appears there's money, but we don't know where it's going and
So that
how this debt is
19.6
being paid.
billion was paid manually using manual transactions.
He said this
Cash.
is for, yeah, in dollars,
Oh, I see.
dollar
Aha.
denomination in January 2025 for KQ guarantee. And then here, according to the National Treasury's medium-term debt management strategy,
Mhm.
MTDS, published in January last year and covering the period 2024-25 to 2026-27, public and publicly guaranteed debt in nominal terms as of 30th June 2023 stood at 10.2787 trillion. That is 70.8% of our GDP. And
Mhm.
apparently, it's not supposed to exceed 55% of GDP.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And
I mean,
Jimmy Wanjigi actually and I believe that's actually a conservative estimate, that 70 point something percent. I believe we could be at 80% of GDP at the moment. It's
yeah,
very
um,
possible. It's very possible, especially because we know that with the euro bonds, there has been, there's issues with the euro bonds and things like that, and some accounts have been, that we have some accounts that we're paying to that we don't even know about, based abroad. We're aware about that. So the fact is that it could be more than that, more than what they're actually stating. But I think we need to wrap up now. It's past midnight, Susan. Now
yeah,
we need to wrap
yeah.
up. Final words, maybe before we wrap up. I think I'm basically done for tonight. Thank
Yeah,
you so much, by the way, Grace. Thank you so much for. She's the first person. She's the only person here today. Normally on Mondays we don't have a very busy show because it's mostly about Kenya. Most people will be watching this once it's recorded. And those of you who watch it once it's already recorded from tomorrow, please include your comments. I always ask you to include your comments, even though you didn't participate in the live show. Still helps me. And if you have my personal number, you can always get in touch and send me a message, because it also helps us to understand what it is that is relevant to you and things like that. If you think that we need to do this show a little bit earlier, let us know also, just because it's really targeted to the Kenyan audience. And we hope that diasporans are going to be watching and benefit from it tonight. Thank you. We can see you anyway watching. We see you guys are watching in the live. Sometimes I see 4, 8 people, 6 people. That's nice to know that we're not talking to nobody. Yeah. Okay. So, Susan, final comments.
yeah. I think today we looked at some of the things that we're seeing now in Kenya. The campaign trail, what our president and the Kenya Kwanza people are up to, what's happening, the shifting sands in terms of the movement from within parties. We're having that shifting even within parties. That's quite, something to watch. Again, some of the many things, the disputes that are arising even within parliament regarding the house committees where there's complaint, stalemate, what's happening to the third arm, or actually we talked about all three arms of government. We talked about the executive, we talked about parliament, and we talked about the judiciary and the upheaval that is certain there, with which has been stopped by a judge. And then, of course, the major things like austerity measures and loss of jobs, and also the boycott of the SHA boycott by 600 hospitals. And we can't
Mm-hmm.
even imagine how many people are going to be impacted by that boycott. Not because they want to, but because they didn't really have a choice. And we've
Mm-hmm.
looked at the various campaign strategies the president is using, the IDs to the constituencies around the borders. We've seen the retirees plan trying to make easy access to it. But one thing we are noticing is that some of these things are not well thought out. The strategies of how to ensure that these things reach the people they're supposed to reach, that's important. Our concern again here about the IDs, that Kenyans are the ones who should really be getting those IDs. Our concern again is about, with the elections coming around the corner, it's time to act now. Young, old, everybody, make sure you have your ID. Keep it safe. Apply for it now, tomorrow. If you don't have it, when they start registering voters, please turn up before the elections. Please go and check to make sure that you are registered to vote in the station that you wanted, and if not, where they have put you, so that you have time to make any changes if necessary. And that's all for me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Susan. So just basically to recap a little bit, and for me, I'm still really much on the issue of the voters' ID, registration and IDs, absolutely critical. Yeah. That we have to remember that why is it important? It's important because there's so many people, young people who are unemployed. Okay. And therefore, it's going to cost you, it's going to be your sacrifice to make sure that you travel to register, to make sure that you travel to get your ID. Those are the things that's what you can do for your country. They say, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Okay, so what can you do for your country? You can actually try to get people, try to ensure that start your ID registration early. And we're already late, by the way. It should have started last year because it's already push for it. It's already started with the current regime. And yes, they have the money. And we should not be intimidated by the fact that they have the facility, that they have the money. Yeah, that we can use influencers, you can use the digital platforms as influencers and ensure that people are going to vote in large numbers. A lot of people are not aware. A lot of people are in the rural areas. Their parents have not gotten them IDs or pushed them to get their IDs, So on the other hand, we know that there are legal challenges right now. Some of my research, I found out that the High Court in December 2024, the High Court order halted the production of new ID cards, the Maisha cards, leading to significant processing delays. That is just recently, December, that's just like about 2 months ago. So we know because of the High Court order, in the production of the new digital IDs, the Maisha cards, there are significant processing delays. Be aware of that there are processing delays right now because of the High Court order. But it doesn't say that they've stopped issuing them. It just means that the processing has been delayed. So the earlier you start, the better. Okay. We also know that talking about manual processing systems, we're relying on manual verification for Kenyans who are living abroad, the diaspora. It's also, again, the processing times have also been extended, and therefore you'll feel the delays even more. And also you'll feel discriminated against. There's some communities that will face additional vetting, and they'll probably be discriminated against. We don't know who those communities are going to be now. We know that the students, okay, the impacts of not having your ID go beyond voting. They go to the things like accessing your services, accessing higher education, accessing your funding for school. So it's important. It's a very important thing to have your ID, even if you're living outside of the country. Yeah. Sometimes what happens is that when you are living abroad, when you have your second ID, let's say maybe you're an American citizen and you have your Kenyan ID, it can give you access to so many things, even to other countries in Africa, free travel within African borders. So we should not underestimate the value of your ID. Yeah, it's very, very important. So all I can just say is also check the status of your application often, and make sure that you actually follow it up and get your ID. That should be your goal for this year. Apart from losing weight, gain an ID, or make sure that you have your ID safely put away. And then again, check where it is that you're registered to vote is very important, so that doesn't become a shock for you. So don't forget that we know that the government is already in campaign mode. They're already in campaign mode. No matter what they tell you, they are in campaign mode. So be aware that if you are thinking of anything, this is the time to be doing it and thinking, not in 2027 or 2026. It will be too late by next year. Okay, guys. So thank you so much for being with us, and thank you for watching. Have a good evening, and see you on Wednesday when we talk geopolitics. Good night. Thank you very much for watching, everybody on the live stream, and everybody who's going to watch. Remember to give us a thumbs up, and thank you very much. Bye-bye. Thank you, Susan. Kwaheri. Kwaheri. Bye-bye.